Hey everyone. Today we're going to talk about something heavy but important. I need you to stay with me on this. We're diving into the warning signs that your child might be experiencing sexual abuse without telling you, and maybe even without fully understanding it themselves. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I'm doing here. I'm just one parent talking to another, sharing what I've learned the hardest way. Wherever you're watching from, whether it's morning coffee in your kitchen or late at night in your car after everyone's asleep, welcome. Now, let's listen to the compelling story in this video of mine. I didn't notice it at first. That's the part that eats at me. You think you'll know right away if something's wrong with your child. You imagine they'll tell you, or at the very least they'll cry or cling or scream. But sometimes, it's none of that. Sometimes it's just quiet. My daughter, she's always been bright. Not just smart, but lit up. She'd bounce down the stairs in the morning, ask too many questions, fill every silence with humming or chatter. Then one day she didn't. It started with something so small I almost brushed it off. She stopped saying goodnight, no kiss on the cheek, just a quiet slip into her room and the door shutting behind her. I thought it was a phase. Preteen stuff. Boundaries. Privacy. But in hindsight, it wasn't defiance or independence. It was withdrawal. You have to listen to the volume change in your home. If the sound of your child's life suddenly lowers, if the energy, the laughter, the complaining, the music, all of it fades, you need to lean in. Don't assume they're just growing up. That's what I told myself. She's growing, she's hormonal, she's moody. But what I was watching was a light dimming. Slowly, she began avoiding eye contact. She'd flinch when I touched her arm too suddenly. Her laughter, when it came, felt forced. I remember watching her during dinner one night, my son cracking jokes like usual, and she gave this weird, polite smile. The kind of smile you give to someone at a job interview, not the goofy, eyes-crinkled smile I knew. That was the moment something in my stomach turned. Still, I didn't want to jump to conclusions. We don't want to be paranoid parents. We don't want to accuse or create panic, and so we talk ourselves out of concern. We find normal explanations for very abnormal behaviors. I began noticing her spending more time alone. She wasn't talking to her friends as much. She started avoiding things she used to love. We'd plan movie nights, her idea even, and then she'd bail at the last minute, saying she was tired. Sometimes she'd just sit and stare at her food, untouched, while the rest of us ate. Then came the tears, not sobbing, just random ones. I'd find her quietly crying in the bathroom with the door cracked open, or wiping her eyes while staring out the car window. And when I asked what was wrong, I don't know. Always that answer, I don't know. And maybe she didn't know, or maybe she was terrified of telling me. Either way, it became clear this wasn't just sadness. This was something deeper, something pressing down on her. Parents, I want you to remember this. Kids rarely say the words we fear. They show it. They hint. They give us clues. Not because they're playing games, but because they're confused, ashamed, or scared. The world suddenly looked different to her, and she didn't have the language or maybe the trust to say what was happening. So she withdrew. She became quiet, too quiet, and I, like so many of us, was almost too late in realizing it. If you see your child's emotions changing in ways that feel disconnected from their life, pay attention. If they become irritable without reason, if their joy feels thin, if their expressions of affection disappear, don't write it off. Of course, kids change, moods swing, they go through phases. But when emotional shifts come with a heaviness, a fog that settles in and stays, your child might not just be growing. They might be carrying something they don't know how to put down. I wish I had asked different questions. Not just are you okay, but what are you afraid of? When did you start feeling this way? Is there someone who makes you uncomfortable? Not in a scary, aggressive tone. Just calm, gentle, curious. The hardest part is, sometimes they want you to ask, but only in the right way, and only when they feel safe enough to say something happened. Looking back, those subtle emotional changes were the first cracks in the dam. They were the signs she was trying to hold everything in and couldn't anymore. If I could go back and catch just one of those early clues, maybe I could have stopped it sooner. So here's my plea to you. Watch your child. Not just what they say, but what they don't. Not just how they act, but how they used to. If they retreat from your arms, your words, your love, don't panic, don't accuse, but lean in. Let them know your love doesn't depend on their smile, their hugs, their words. Let them know you're here, no matter what. Because sometimes just knowing you're not alone in the dark is enough to bring a child back into the light. It was around the same time that she started avoiding people and places. There used to be this family friend, someone we saw often. Let's call him Uncle Min. Not a real uncle, but the kind you grow up around so much that the title sticks. He was always cheerful, always teasing the kids, bringing candy, offering to babysit. A man everyone trusted, including me. At first, nothing seemed off. But my daughter, she started finding reasons to stay in her room when he visited. She used to run to the door when she heard his voice. Suddenly, she was locking herself in the bathroom or hiding behind the couch with headphones on. One time, I asked, "Why don't you come say hi?" She looked up at me with the faintest panic in her eyes and said, "I just don't want to." I brushed it off. Told myself maybe she was just being shy. Maybe she was tired or annoyed with his jokes, but I felt something tighten in my chest, something I didn't want to face. Then it wasn't just Uncle Min, it was school. She began asking to stay home more often. Headaches, stomach aches, vague complaints that changed each time I questioned them. Then it became an outright fear of certain teachers, of one specific after-school tutor we'd trusted for months. You want to believe your child's world is safe, that the people around them are good. But if your child begins showing a pattern of avoiding someone with a level of fear that seems out of proportion, don't ignore it. Children can't always say, "This person hurt me." What they can say is, "I don't want to be around them." And if you push past that sign too quickly, if you make them hug, smile, sit near, or spend time with someone who triggers them, you may accidentally reinforce their silence. I remember one Sunday, we were getting ready to visit my cousin's house. My daughter begged me not to go, literally pleaded, "I don't want to go. Please, please don't make me." I asked why, and she just cried. Couldn't speak. I thought she was being dramatic. I told her we'd only stay for a little bit. I even got annoyed, said something like, "You used to love going over there. What's wrong with you lately?" She went silent the whole ride. That day, I saw her flinch when one of the older boys touched her shoulder to pass her the remote. Flinch, not just discomfort. She recoiled like it burned. And still, I didn't know what to say. I watched her sit on the floor instead of the couch, watched her keep her arms folded tightly over her chest the entire visit. Avoidance isn't always fear with screaming and panic. Sometimes it's just tension. The way a child shrinks in their own skin. The way they stay behind instead of running ahead. How they suddenly forget sleepovers they used to love, or how they stare at their shoes when someone walks into the room. If your child is avoiding a person, a place, or a specific situation, and their reason doesn't make sense on the surface, look deeper, especially when their body tenses, their eyes dart, or their voice gets small when that name or location is mentioned. One mistake I made, asking why too forcefully. "Why don't you want to go? What happened? Are you hiding something?" That just made her shut down more. She thought I was angry, or maybe scared of what she'd say, or maybe she was scared of being disbelieved. So instead, try this. You don't have to go if something's making you uncomfortable. You can tell me anything. I won't get mad. I just want to protect you. And mean it. Mean it with every muscle in your face and every softness in your tone. There's a difference between normal kid fussiness and trauma-based avoidance. The former fades fast, usually after some time or a small bribe. But the latter? It stays. It festers. It makes your child look like they're watching the door even when they're sitting at the table. There was one night I found her shaking under her blanket after a visitor had just left. I asked if she had a bad dream. She whispered, "I don't like him." I asked who. She just turned away. That night still haunts me. It took months before she opened up, before the word touch came out of her mouth, before she whispered, "I didn't know if it was bad because he smiled the whole time." Those moments of avoidance were not just fear, they were survival instincts. Children know danger in their bones, even when their brain hasn't named it yet, even when they love the person hurting them, or when they used to. If your child is scared of someone, even someone you trust your child more. That's the takeaway. And it's not always a monster behind the curtain. Sometimes it's someone you sit next to at every family barbecue, someone who laughs too loudly and always asks for hugs, someone who makes your child visibly shrink. Watch their body, trust their reaction. Be brave enough to say, "We don't need to go," even when it makes no sense to anyone else. Because sometimes the only way to keep them safe is to believe them before they know how to speak. The first time I heard it, it stopped me cold. We were in the kitchen. I was chopping carrots. She was doodling at the table. A normal afternoon, nothing heavy. The TV was on low in the background, something silly. Then she said it, casually, like a joke. "Ugh, he's such a perv." I turned around slowly. "Where did you hear that word?" She shrugged. "People say it." "But where did you hear it?" I asked again. She didn't answer. At first, I wanted to scold her. It felt inappropriate, especially from an 11-year-old. I almost did the "that's not a nice word" talk, but something held me back. Something about the way she said it. Not bold, not curious, familiar. Like she knew what it meant. Like it wasn't just a word. It was a label she had seen applied in real life. That's when I started paying closer attention. Because this wasn't the first time. A few days earlier, she was watching a cartoon, and when a male character put his hand on a girl's back, she muttered, "Creepy." Now, I'm not saying kids don't pick up this kind of stuff from the internet, from friends, from older cousins. They do. But there's a difference between repeating something you've heard and understanding it. And in my daughter's voice, I heard experience. That unnerved me. Not long after that, I noticed her playing with her dolls differently. She'd have one hide in the closet, while the other one knocked on the door over and over saying, "I just want to cuddle." My heart sank. I sat down next to her and asked, "Where'd you get that idea for your game?" She shrugged again. "Nowhere. Just made it up." I was stunned. I wanted to scream, to cry, to fix everything right that second. But I knew if I reacted too loudly, too emotionally, she'd stop talking altogether. So instead, I just sat there. I listened. That was the beginning of a flood of strange, age-inappropriate phrases. Mentions of sleeping together, comments about who had seen her in the shower, remarks that sounded like they came out of the mouth of someone much, much older. One night she asked, "Is it normal when adults touch you, there?" She asked it like she was talking about the weather. Detached, almost robotic. I froze. My heart stopped beating for a full 2 seconds. I said as calmly as I could, "No, sweetheart. It's not normal. Why do you ask?" She didn't answer, but her eyes told me everything. Parents, this is one of the hardest parts to face. Sexualized language or behavior in children. You don't expect it. You don't want it. But when it shows up, you have to pay attention. If your child begins using sexual terms, making inappropriate jokes, mimicking adult sexual behavior in play, or even just seems aware of sexual concepts far beyond what you've taught, they didn't invent that. Kids don't pull this stuff out of thin air. Either they've seen something they shouldn't have, or something has happened to them. And yes, it's uncomfortable. We want to shield our kids from this stuff. We hope they stay innocent. But pretending you didn't hear it or brushing it off as kids these days is a dangerous gamble. Even if the behavior doesn't seem extreme, even if it's just subtle things like their dolls kissing in secret or your child refusing to undress even in front of you, that's a sign. You may also notice them becoming overly curious about body parts or boundaries. Or the opposite, suddenly disgusted by normal physical affection. Either way, it's about control. They're trying to process something they don't fully understand, and they're showing you the only way they can. Another thing? If a child has experienced abuse, they might not label it as such. They might mimic it instead. They play out scenes. They repeat words. They act strange with their siblings or friends. And if you catch it, your reaction matters more than anything. Don't explode. Don't shame them. Don't say, "Where did you hear that?" like a punishment. That just shuts the door. Instead, ask, "That's an interesting thing to say. What made you think of that?" Or, "That sounds like something someone older might say. Has anyone said that to you before?" Soft, curious, never accusing. In my case, I sat with my daughter and slowly began untangling the threads. We talked about secrets, about touches, about how her body was hers, and finally she whispered the name. I'll never forget that moment. The world tilted on its axis. Everything I thought I knew crumbled. But I kept my voice steady. I told her I believed her, that I loved her, that she was safe now. And then I took the next steps: legal, emotional, medical. But the first step was listening. The signs were all there: the words, the games, the language. She'd been crying out for help in a language I didn't recognize until I did. If your child is suddenly more interested in bodies, boundaries, or private parts, or if they use words they shouldn't know, don't ignore it. Don't assume they're just curious. Ask questions. Open doors. Let them know that no topic is off limits, that they're safe with you. Because sometimes a single word spoken at the kitchen table is a lifeline in disguise. Waiting for continue, I remember the moment I saw the bruise. It was a Saturday morning. I was sorting laundry, the usual weekend chaos: blankets, school uniforms, and a mountain of mismatched socks. My daughter had just come out of the bathroom, wrapped in a towel, hair dripping. She bent over to pick up her pajamas, and just for a second, the towel slipped. There it was, a small, deep purple bruise on the inside of her upper thigh. I froze. What happened there? I asked as casually as I could manage. She flinched, subtle but visible, and quickly pulled the towel tighter. I bumped into the bedpost. I nodded slowly. That must have really hurt. Not really, she mumbled and disappeared into her room. And just like that, the moment passed. But it didn't leave me. I replayed that image 100 times in my head. The location, the color, the instinct she had to hide it. My gut told me something was wrong, but my brain told me not to overreact. That kids get bruises all the time, and it's true, they do, but not there. Not often, and not with that look of panic in their eyes when you ask. Looking back, that wasn't the only physical sign I'd missed. There had been complaints of stomach aches, often at bedtime, at school time, at the exact moments she'd normally have to face the world. The pediatrician said it might be anxiety, maybe dietary. We tried probiotics. We cut dairy, but nothing helped. Then came the trouble sleeping. Nightmares. Tossing and turning. Wetting the bed. A behavior that had long stopped years before. When I asked her about it, she just whispered, "Sometimes I feel scared, even when I'm alone." There were also more frequent trips to the bathroom, even when she hadn't eaten much. She'd stay in there longer. Sometimes she'd come out looking pale. Other times she'd just shut the door and not come out for a long time. I thought maybe she was constipated or shy about bathroom habits. But the truth? She just didn't want to be seen. Children who have been abused may show subtle but very real physical signs, not always dramatic, but telling. Things like bruises in unusual places, inner thighs, buttocks, lower back, scratches or redness around genitals, discomfort when sitting or walking, trouble using the bathroom, recurring UTIs or yeast infections, especially in girls, sudden aversion to bathing or changing clothes. These signs are easy to miss, or worse, easy to excuse. I once saw her wince slightly when sitting down, but she brushed it off, said the chair was weird. Later, I'd learned she'd been hurt days before, and the pain hadn't faded yet. And yet, I never found any definitive proof. No blood, no screaming, no torn clothing. Because abuse isn't always violent. Sometimes it's quiet, strategic, calculated. Abusers know what they're doing, and they do it in ways that don't leave visible damage. And because of that, we as parents must be vigilant. We must not dismiss physical complaints as overreacting or just being dramatic. We must not brush off chronic pain or discomfort as a phase. If your child suddenly doesn't want to go swimming when they used to love it, or if they start refusing to change clothes in front of you, it's not always modesty. It can be shame, or fear, or trauma. I remember one specific day, I'd asked her if she wanted to go shopping for new clothes, a mother-daughter day. She hesitated and said, "Do I have to try things on?" I said, "Just a few things, in the fitting room." And she answered, "What if someone sees me?" That answer struck me hard. I told her no one could see her, that the curtain would be closed. She just shook her head. You never know. Sometimes people don't listen. I didn't push her to explain, but I should have. I should have known that her fear wasn't just about the curtain. It was about what had already happened when someone didn't listen. There's also the reality of how a child relates to their own body after abuse. They might avoid mirrors, refuse to wear certain clothes, hunch their shoulders, cross their arms tightly. You may see them become fixated on washing themselves, or the opposite, becoming unkempt, dirty, careless. It's all a reflection of how they feel inside, disconnected, ashamed, confused. If you notice consistent patterns, physical discomfort, unusual injuries, tension during basic routines like bathing, changing, or sitting, don't ignore them. And don't always believe the first answer you get when you ask, "What happened?" Not because they're lying, but because they may be trying to protect someone, or they don't want to get in trouble. Or, heartbreaking as it is, they've been told it's their fault. Your role in that moment is simple, but profound. Believe what your instincts are screaming. Ask gently, observe carefully, offer trust without pressure, and most importantly, don't wait for proof. If your gut says something's not right, act. Take them to a doctor, a counselor, someone trained to ask the right questions. Sometimes a child can't say it to you, but they will say it to someone they perceive as neutral. I'll never forget the pediatrician's words after a quiet, gentle checkup. "I can't say for certain, but her body is showing signs of stress. There are enough red flags here that I'd recommend talking to a trauma specialist." And just like that, the dam broke. The truth came out piece by piece. I didn't want to believe it, but I'm so grateful I finally did. Because sometimes the only physical proof you'll ever get is a bruise that makes no sense and a child who suddenly flinches when you reach for their hand. And if you see that, don't look away. It didn't happen overnight, but suddenly everything about her daily rhythm was off. At first, it was the mornings. She used to be up early, excited to pick out her outfit or talk about what was happening at school. But now, I had to wake her 2 or 3 times. When I finally got her out of bed, she moved like a ghost, slow, disconnected, barely there. She'd sit at the table and push food around on her plate, not eating. I'd ask, "You feeling okay?" She'd just nod, or shrug, or whisper, "I'm not hungry." It felt like she was in a fog. That's what trauma does sometimes. It doesn't just hurt the heart, it invades the body. It changes appetite. It wrecks sleep. It creates chaos in places you don't expect. Soon it wasn't just the mornings, it was bedtime too. She stopped asking for our usual nighttime routine. The hugs, the quick story, the little "I love you" we'd say with the lights out. She wanted the door shut, the room dark. But then 5 minutes later, she'd call out, "Can you check if the window's locked?" Or worse, "Can you just sit here until I fall asleep?" She was scared. All the time. But she wouldn't say why. Only that she didn't like being alone. Sleep became the enemy. Nightmares started. I'd find her curled up in a ball, sheets twisted, face sweaty. Sometimes she'd wake up screaming. Other times she'd come into our room and just stand there until I noticed her, wordless, still, trembling. I asked once, "What are your dreams about?" She wouldn't say. Just shook her head. Then it was school. Her teacher called, said she wasn't finishing work, that she seemed distracted, that she cried during a test, that she got into a fight with a classmate and wouldn't explain why. She's not herself, they said. Tell me about it. She started asking to stay home more often, not with loud protests, but with quiet, believable excuses. My stomach hurts. I didn't sleep well. I feel dizzy. Sometimes I believed her. Sometimes I didn't. But every time I looked at her pale face, her blank eyes, I saw something deeper than illness. I saw a girl unraveling. Eating changed too. She either ate almost nothing or binged in secret. I'd find wrappers under the bed, empty chip bags hidden in her backpack. Not because she was hungry, but because she was trying to feel something. Anything. Kids don't always say, "I'm scared" or "I'm hurting." Instead, they act it out in their daily lives. Some kids stop eating. Some overeat. Some sleep all day. Others stop sleeping at all. Some fall behind in school. Others become perfectionists, desperate to control something in a world that suddenly feels terrifying. And here's the hard part. None of those things on their own scream abuse. They could just be signs of stress, hormones, depression, or even a tough school year. That's why it's so easy to miss. But when you start seeing multiple disruptions, eating, sleeping, school, friendships, together, that's when the alarm bell should go off. I remember the moment I knew for sure something was very wrong. It wasn't the crying. It wasn't the silence. It was when she stood in the middle of her room and said, "I don't want to go anywhere anymore." I asked her what she meant. "Anywhere?" She nodded. "Nowhere feels safe." That line crushed me. Even her room, her sanctuary, felt invaded. She used to decorate it with drawings, string lights, little notes to herself. Now it was bare, cold, like she didn't want to claim it anymore. I kept thinking, what happened to my girl? But deep down, I already knew. So I started keeping track. I wrote down every pattern, every complaint, every time she didn't eat, every time she got up 5 times at night to check the door lock. I made a list, not because I wanted to prove anything, but because I needed to see the full picture. And when I took that list to a child therapist, the look on her face said it all. "This is what trauma looks like," she said gently. "She's not trying to misbehave. She's surviving." That moment changed everything. I wish someone had told me sooner that when a child's daily routines fall apart, it's often because their sense of safety has been shattered. Their body is keeping the score. Their brain is stuck in defense mode. They're not lazy. They're not being difficult. They're not spoiled. They're hurt. And they don't always know how to say it. If your child suddenly stops sleeping, eating, engaging, learning, ask why. And ask with softness, not with accusation, not with frustration, but with that quiet presence that says, whatever's going on, I can handle it. I've got you. Some days, my daughter still struggles. Some nights, she still asks if I'll sit beside her. But now, we talk. We name things. She knows I believe her. She knows I see her. And if I can give you one piece of advice from the hardest chapter of my life, it's this. Don't ignore the small disruptions. They are often the first signs that something big and terrible is happening just beneath the surface. Because when a child's life begins to break down one habit at a time, it's not a phase, it's a message. And we have to be brave enough to listen. The hardest part of this story isn't what happened to my daughter. It's what happened to me, as her parent, when I realized I missed the signs. There's a special kind of guilt that wraps around your heart when you start piecing it together too late. I used to lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, asking myself, how didn't I see it sooner? Why didn't I ask the right questions? Why didn't I believe my instincts when something felt off? I want to say this clearly, in case you're feeling the same thing. You're not a bad parent if you missed it. You're a human parent. And the systems we live in, the social pressures, the politeness, the blind trust in family or friends, they are built to make us doubt ourselves. Abusers don't look like monsters. They look like mentors, babysitters, uncles, coaches, the same people you've had over for dinner, the same people who say, let me know if you ever need anything. That's the cruel truth. It's often someone close, someone trusted. And our kids, they don't always come to us with the whole story. They might come with silence, with avoidance, with bruises that seem like clumsiness, with phrases you don't think they should know, with tears and stomach aches and mood swings. It took months for my daughter to finally say the words. Not all at once, not in a neat confession. It came out sideways, like puzzle pieces dumped out of a box. First, she said, "He touched me by accident." Later, "I didn't want him to." And eventually, through tears, he said not to tell anyone. I had to steady myself. I had to make my voice calm when everything inside me was screaming. Because in that moment, she wasn't just watching what I said, she was watching how I reacted. And if she saw anger or panic or disbelief, she might have shut the door again. So I said the only thing I could. I believe you. I'm so sorry this happened. And it's not your fault. I said it again and again until she cried in my arms, until her body relaxed just a little, until the shame began to lift from her tiny shoulders. Then I got to work. We reported it. We found a child trauma therapist. We surrounded her with safety. She didn't have to face him again. She didn't have to explain to anyone who didn't matter. And she knew, more than anything, that I had her back. But here's what I wish I knew sooner. I wish I had trusted that uneasy feeling in my chest when things didn't add up. I wish I had asked softer questions earlier. I wish I had prepared her before anything happened, talked about body autonomy, private parts, safe versus unsafe touch, in kid language, not after something went wrong. I wish I had known that you don't need a bruised child sobbing in your arms to start asking questions. That the signs can be subtle, quiet, invisible, and still deadly serious. Because the truth is, most abuse doesn't come to light until months or years after it begins. And too often, it's brushed off, disbelieved, or buried under layers of doubt and guilt. Don't let that happen to your child. If you've noticed some of the things I've talked about, odd bruises, sudden fears, behavior changes, sexualized language, daily routines unraveling, you don't have to wait for confirmation. You can act now. You can ask. You can observe. You can tell your child they are safe to tell you anything. And if you find out something you never wanted to hear, react with love first. Let justice, reports, therapy, all of that come after. But first, wrap them in your arms and show them you are their shelter. I'll be honest, it doesn't get wrapped up neatly. There are still hard days. My daughter still struggles with nightmares, with trust, with the shame she didn't ask for. But she is healing because she was believed, because she was seen, and because even though I was late, I showed up for her fully when she needed me most. So please, don't wait. If you feel something's off, it probably is. Don't let fear or doubt delay you. Don't silence your instincts to protect a reputation, a family relationship, or your own peace of mind. You are your child's first line of defense. And when they can't speak, your job is to listen without words, to notice the silence, the fear, the change, and to say, with your whole heart, whatever it is, I will believe you. You are safe now, because the worst thing you can do is nothing. And the best thing, believe sooner. Finish the script, enjoy listening, and subscribe to the channel to see the next video. Conclusion, final summary, and outward words. If you've made it this far, thank you. I know this wasn't an easy story to hear. It wasn't easy to live either, but it's one that more parents, caregivers, and adults need to listen to, because the warning signs are real, and they're often right in front of us. In this story, you've heard about the subtle emotional changes, the quiet avoidance, the words no child should know, the bruises we dismiss, the daily routines that start to fall apart, and finally, the guilt that comes from not seeing it all sooner. But this isn't a story about failure. It's a story about waking up, because when we know better, we can do better. And maybe, just maybe, this story will help you catch something early, or give you the courage to ask that question, or the strength to believe your child the moment they need you most. Let this be your reminder. Abuse hides in laughter, in silence, in routines, but it also leaves traces. And if you're paying attention, not just with your eyes, but with your heart, you can see it. You are not alone, and neither is your child. So talk to them. Ask the awkward questions. Create space for safety. Learn the signs. And most importantly, believe them before the words even leave their lips. Because sometimes, the way we respond in those first few moments can change a child's life forever. Enjoyed this video or learned something from it? Like it, share it, and don't forget to subscribe, but only if you really like what I'm doing here. Your support helps stories like this reach more people who need them. Take care of yourself, take care of your little ones, and I'll see you in the next video. Finish the script, enjoy listening, and subscribe to the channel to see the next video.